Resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Artist Level podcast. Hi, Sarah. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm doing great. And my friends, I'm super excited because today, well, there's two reasons I'm excited. One, we are here at 33 Contemporary Gallery. So I'm not in my typical home studio, but rather I'm here in the middle of the gallery. We have beautiful artwork behind us. And I have wonderful company. I have Sarah Opat, who is joining the conversation today. And she is an artist. She's a writer. And she is also a drawing model. And we're going to have a great conversation on the subject of why it's important to have the written word being part of our art practice. You know, why artists should have their work contextualized in written form. So I think that's going to be a great episode. So how you doing, Sarah?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be here and talk about the importance of writing for artists.
Very cool, and that's something that you are passionate about. So before we talk a little bit about that and how that relates to artists, let's tell us a little bit about yourself. So where you grew up and how you came here to Chicago.
Yeah, so my story roots back to Hegewisch, Illinois, where my dad was raised. It was a really Polish community, but it was South Chicago. And I moved to Indiana about when I was 9, and then I just moved back to Chicago this year in February. And what's pulled me back is the artist community. I think just being able to connect with artists, especially at the Joby Center for the last couple of years, being able to move forward and as a painter and meet fellow creatives, it's just an exciting place to be.
Very cool. And where did you go to school?
I went to school at Purdue University, and that's in Indiana. For communications and advertising, so a lot of writing and learning how to give press to people. Very cool.
And a fun fact, which I just found out the other day, is that we kind of worked at a similar place or at the same place, like within probably 5-8 years difference. When I graduated from college and I went looking for work, I was working as a graphic designer for this particular advertising company. And then you ended up working in that same company, but many years later.
Yeah.
And I didn't last there too long, and I think you didn't either.
Right. And it's funny because that's where Talking Stones started, was when I was working at the San Jose Group, the advertising agency.
Yeah, that's right. So tell me about this Talking Stones thing, which is kind of like the name that you use for your art or for your business. So what is that? What is that about?
Talking Stones is an idea that originated on a double-decker train when I was writing in my notebook. And it started off as a freestyle writing, so just stream of consciousness, and Talking Stones came on the paper from my hand and the ink. And what it is, it allows artists to give press for themselves and for me to give a chance to show people what is going on in the news of art. Because so much of the news we see isn't saturated in evolving, growing human consciousness.
Got it. Very cool. Awesome. And so where does this passion for writing starts for you? Is that something that you always wanted to do? Is that something that came as you were in school? Where did that come from?
I think the passion for writing just started my whole life. Ever since I was a kid, I loved writing. But I think it's when I started working for a niche art gallery in Pilsen. I was writing for artists, and I had this feeling like I was doing what I needed to be doing. And my passion for writing and giving artists a chance to talk about what they do really shows some true colors, and I appreciate the transparency, but also the authentic value of writing and describing an artist's work. I think it's really fun to describe, whether it's the painting behind us or the painting in front of us, since we're in a gallery. There's so much to describe.
So this idea of writing kind of, it was something that you had within you. You've been working with and practicing. I guess it's like any other type of art form. The more you do it, the better you get at. You had I had the privilege for you writing a text of my latest show at ACS Gallery, which was pretty awesome. I had a great time reading your insight and how you saw my work. And you have done also other articles for our blog here at the Amplified Art Network as well, which is pretty awesome. And to me, like writing is one of those things that I see is harder and harder to find because we live almost in a world that is so instant, so media driven, like the image, the video, that almost like this art, the written form, in a way, people are pushing it back. But how important it is, I think, to have it, and to have people like you, who are interested in telling the artist story, or in kind of starting the conversation on what that which the art is making, means to you, or what you perceive by the artist. So I think that what you're doing is so fabulous. That's why I asked you if you could be in the podcast, because I think it's so important. For an artist, I think to have his or her work seen and documented in written form, I think is very important, to contextualize the work in time, in space, not only through video and pictures and social media, which is so fast moving, versus text where it stays, right? It stays, it can be searched. Probably years from now, everything that's been written can be found. It's incredible to think about that. And because text can be also searched and indexed and so on, it makes it more also accessible. Viable. Exactly. So how do you approach, when you go to see an exhibition, or you're going to write about an artist, show or life or so on, how do you approach it on a personal level? How do you start? Like, where do you depart? Which for me is really interesting.
When I view art, it's a matter of describing it with my eyes in a way, but when I put things to words, it flows through me. So when I do see a piece of art and I want to write about it, it immediately flows like a river of consciousness of words. And so I think it's just a passion that flows like a river, and the words that I do describe art with, it comes natural. So I guess it's hard to put into words this way versus writing it.
The process, right.
Yeah.
So, but when you start looking at the art, you kind of have some sort of idea what you might want to start looking at, or you like to be surprised by what you see, which, or maybe both, I don't know. I think
both. So I first look to see the texture within the art, and see if there's any type of feeling from the texture that I get, if it's a pattern or if it's an abstract form. And that will make me feel something based off the texture. And then from there, I can take the words to the place that they belong. Okay.
So in the case of, as you start writing for artists and you're writing about exhibitions and culture and so on, so what type of art kind of attracts you? What type of exhibitions, what kind of moves you?
Art that speaks the truth. I think it's vast, it's creative, it's flow-like. Any exhibit that is the artist speaking their truth in color and form. It could be black and white photography from the 90s, and it can speak to me like the same way these abstract images do before us. And I think it's just a matter of the artist really putting forth their soul into their work. And when I walk into an exhibition, I feel that presence, the energy of the soul. And I think what I try and put into words is the soul that they try and show us through their art.
Very interesting. And I think, as artists, sometimes, even for the artist, sometimes it's hard to put words on the work that we make, right? A lot of times, working with so many artists, and as an artist myself, a lot of times, it takes somebody like you to come in and start putting words in the work that we make. And for an artist, particularly, it is very difficult sometimes to sit down and say, okay, what do I want to say about this work? Where do I start? What's my point of departure? And sometimes for many artists it becomes really hard and difficult to kind of put into words what we are doing, what sometimes what we're feeling, what we're thinking, what we're experiencing, right? And so as you as an artist and also as a writer, how do you find that the process of making art also informs your writing or influences your own writing? Because you are not a writer who has never made art, but you are also an artist, so you're an artist who writes.
Yes, yeah.
So how does that, the artist part of you also influence or informs, the way you write?
So I'd say the artist in me, the painter side, influences the writer aspect of my life by being free. And as an artist, there is an essence of freedom in creation. So the transcendence of painting and being free there flows into being free in writing. And I I think I just go for having no boundaries when I write, so there is absolute freedom in my mind and a creative space where I can flow.
Okay. Cool. Do you find yourself doing a lot of editing on let's say when you write something, do you find yourself like going back and doing a lot of editing, or is it pretty straightforward? Or
I usually try and get the bold, blunt points forward and then edit into a beautiful flower garden of words. That's how I'd put it. My editing process probably is up to like 2 or 3 drafts, just depending on if I wrote the sentences in full form or just fragments. Because my mind can be moving so fast that I just write fragments and then eventually make them into sentences.
Okay, very cool. That's awesome. Is there one particular artist that if you had an opportunity to write about from the history of art, that you could, who would that be? That if you had an opportunity to say, okay, I have a genius right now, and you can bring back an old master or any artist in the history of art that you could sit in front of him and write about that artist, who would that be? Him or her? It doesn't matter.
Salvador Dali.
Yeah?
Definitely.
What is it? What attracts you about his work?
My whole life, my sister Lee has been inspired by Dali, and so I've always seen his books and his vivid imagery. And he really takes dreamland into reality, and that's what I appreciate.
Got it. Very cool. And now another part of you, and it's not only you're the artist, you're also the writer, but you also have done podcasting, right? You had actually radio, more than podcast, radio, and you had a whole series of interviews, so it's a radio show. Tell us a little bit about that, how that came out. What was your show about? Where can people find it?
So On the Radar is located on Lakeshore Public Radio's website. And I was working for them for about a year, and I was able to produce and create a show called On the Radar, where I was able to talk to artists from Chicago about their passion. And I wanted to take this idea of letting artists talk about where they started and where they're going, and let it really transcend into reality so people in their cars traveling could hear the stranger's story and be moved. And these artists were my friends, so I just reached out to friends and asked, where did this passion begin, where you're going, and they would talk about exhibits or maybe a show coming up, so musician-wise too.
Yeah, okay.
And I would just edit in some music, and then there was also an interview with a writer from Texas, and he talked about a really interesting topic that I had to just interview him on, and that was, this might be a little interesting, but the war on pornography and being able to talk about something in patriarchy in that whole field, just being able to go into the idea that patriarchy can end. Yeah, so that was interesting.
That's really cool. That's really cool. What kind of topics did you enjoy talking about more, when you were doing the radio show?
When I was in radio, I loved talking about mindfulness and how mindfulness affects us as human beings in our everyday lives, and how taking 3 deep breaths can change your whole life. So
how taking what?
3 deep breaths,
3 deep breaths?
Changes your consciousness and your chemicals in your brain.
Okay. And that's something that we talk a lot about here in the Art Next Level too, the importance of mindfulness, wellness, because I think, it could be that we are bombarded by all these go do and market and it's all this rain of information that comes to us every single day. You just go to any of the social media and it's just got this rain of information, radio, video, everything everywhere, and it could be overwhelming. And I think mindfulness is so important, understanding who we are, and where we're going, and how easy it is sometimes to lose track of that and to forget about that. I mean, I know it happens to me sometimes in the running of everyday life and so on, but kind of taking the time to say, okay, wait a minute, where am I, who I am, and where I'm going. So, such importance. And maybe that relates also to the kind of 3 breaths of air that you're talking about. So in your own life, what kind of practices you do to kind of help you stay mindful and focus and keeping track of your well-being?
Qigong is something I've been practicing for the past 3 or 4 years, and also
Qigong. And what does that consist of?
Qigong is energy work. I wouldn't say it's like yoga, but it's standing still and feeling the energy of the hands and breathing through the body, and it's generating a focus on how the body feels. Yoga and playing guitar, I'd say.
Oh, you play the guitar?
Yeah.
Oh, that is pretty cool.
My dad's old guitar, he taught me how to play a couple years ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. And you find that kind of relaxes you or clears your
Definitely.
mind and so on?
I think it's another way to be an artist, and through music, and I'm able to release a lot of emotions and write some songs.
Oh, okay, you're also a songwriter.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's more so like an individual closed door, to put it
Where's the
that way.
guitar?
Yeah.
Very cool.
But I'd say it always comes back to writing. I feel like the opportunity to write for artists always brings me the most fulfillment, and being able to give them press is something I think every artist needs, definitely.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about that, because this podcast we like to talk a lot about, practical things, right? Things that artists or listeners or friends who are listening right now, things that they can do, things that can help them as well. So what do you think would be like some good tips that we can give to artists, to be ready to be written about, right? What kind of do you look for in an artist that you want to write about?
Someone that's approachable and friendly, so I'm able to meet the artist in person at an exhibit or at an event.
So approachability is very important, okay?
And I'd say art that just speaks volumes and is from their soul, definitely.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, in specifically how you can help artists, what kind of the services that you provide for artists that can help them in their career.
So what I do is I write for Talking Stones, and Talking Stones provides the services to artists that can write an artist review or artist biographies. For emerging artists, I'd say biography is a big aspect if you want to get into exhibits. So a statement, it will also help out. And I also provide press releases as well as packages. So if you can purchase an artist statement, artist biography, along with the press release.
Okay. So if I'm an artist who, for example, I need some help with that, so I can call you, hey, Sarah, I need some help.
Yeah.
So you can help me kind of get the words out, of, for my work, artist statement, but also you can do your own kind of observation and have your own writing. Let's say, for example, another one that artists might need a lot is, for example, writing up for an exhibition or an essay for a catalog. Those things that it's important to have somebody else write about you as an artist, not just your own words, but somebody else with a different point of view, the different ideas come in and contextualize your work that way. That's something that you do also.
Exactly. So Talking Stones is a platform. You can find it at talkingstones.weebly, that's weebly.com. And you can read in the blog section the artist reviews I've done in the past. And you can see how the detail really transforms the reader and takes them to see the imagery in their own mind. So the services I provide allow an artist to show their work, but through words. And my job is to translate their art into words so others can understand what we're looking at.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And where can or friends find you in social media?
Social media would be talkingstones.art. That's for Instagram, and for Facebook, it's Sarah Opat. And Twitter would be Sarah on the Radar. And that gives you access to all my Lakeshore Public Radio on the Radar interviews as well.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Now, it's your turn to ask me a question. What would be one question that you would like to ask me in the podcast?
Yes. I've always wondered, how has your life as an artist transformed your soul?
How does my life transform my soul?
As an artist.
As an artist. That's a great question. Nobody had asked me that. Okay. So let me think. How does my life have transformed us? I think, well, I don't see them as separate, right? I think they kind of go together. So the soul and the life, I think it's what makes it happen to, the reality which we live. So personally, I think when I make work that is true to myself, work that is true to me, I think then I'm enriching myself and I'm enriching my soul. I think that's at the bottom line. When I go sometimes in the studio and I have maybe because something I saw or something I read or a show I've seen, and I try to emulate something, then sometimes I have to stop myself and say, wait a minute, I'm just reacting to what other people have done or are doing, but it's not true to me. And sometimes I have to stop and say, okay, no, wait a minute, I have to go back to what's true me, right? And that has sometimes it's pros and cons, because sometimes, you may be doing work that is not necessarily what the art market is looking for, or what the art market may be kind of pushing at the moment, right? But at the same time, I think artists, we need to respond to our true self, and not necessarily say, okay, what's fashionable right now, or what's it selling right now, and that's only what I'm going to do, but rather doing the work that we love, at the same time being smart about how we go in relation to our business. And I think at the end of the day, if you can do that, I think your soul will feel fulfilled, and you'll feel happy of the work that you're doing. When you wake up in the morning, say, I'm excited to wake up today and do the work that I have to do as an artist, whether it's in the studio or outside of the studio, whether having an interview right now or whatever it may be, is part of what I chose to do, and how exciting that I can actually do it.
That's amazing.
I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah. And I think enriching the soul with art is just an ongoing process.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for being here with us here in the Artist Next Level podcast. Super excited. Hopefully we have you again.
Definitely.
Have more conversations, and maybe we pick some topics and we come back and have some conversations as well. So then, my friends, thank you for being with us today. Hope you have an amazing day, and we'll see you at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.